Now they've got photos of the F-22 Raptor, probably the most incredible air-to-air dominance plane ever, and it's now being phased out. That seems like, given what's going on with China, seems like a great idea. Let's go with the F-35 program, which everybody says is inferior. I'm sure there's some Air Force guys who are shouting right now, either I'm right or I'm wrong. But anyway, the F-22 shot down that Chinese balloon. There's a whole lot more information that's coming out about this. And what we've seen, I think, at this point for sure on the balloon, Clay, is the Biden administration was either caught totally off guard by some aspects of this and said things that they thought were true that weren't, or they were just lying, to people about what was really going on here. I think that's something we're going to have to dig into a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's actually an important story. And we talked yesterday with the acting defense secretary at the end of the Trump administration about whether they had any clue that some of these Chinese spy balloons ever traversed U.S. territory. And I think CNN had the story up, Buck, if I'm not mistaken, where it was very different, right? Like the Chinese spy balloon may have gone a little bit into Hawaii territory and then also may have come across Florida a little bit, but it's nothing compared to, hey, we entered in Alaska and we spent 6 days slowly having this Chinese spy balloon traverse the entirety of the United States. It's quite a bit different. And how do we spend $850 billion a year? The thing that I'm most concerned about is, when did we know that this Chinese spy balloon entered into the United States? And if we didn't know, why didn't we? But this thing should have been shot down immediately in Alaska, where there are massive areas that are uninhabited. And, Buck, we could have done this potentially without the media ever needing to know at all, and without creating an international incident, keeping this all under the radar that it had ever occurred instead of becoming a massive story like it did. I wanted to hit you with Karine Jean-Pierre. And she was asked about the spy balloon. Buck, I don't know about this. My mom actually texted me this suggestion. Would it be permissible for any members of the Republican House to walk into the State of the Union with a small white balloon, like you would give to a young child, attached to their wrist or holding it in their hand, to point out the Chinese balloon? I mean, I think that would actually be pretty funny. I don't know what the rules are about whether you're allowed to walk in with a, I'm talking about like a kid's balloon that you would get if you were at like a kid's birthday party or something. Funny or not funny in your mind if a Republican member came in with a white balloon, or if multiple Republican members had kid white balloons with them for purposes of the State of the Union.
I mean, it would be even funnier. Do you remember the big Trump baby balloon they had in Europe?
Oh,
there were
yeah,
a lot of memes over the weekend about how Trump should send over the Trump baby balloon, which the whole thing was very funny. And Trump actually had a sense of humor about it. I think Don Jr. retweeted a meme about that too, because he thought it was amusing as well. Yeah, I would do a little good-natured trolling of the Democrats on this occasion if possible. I might show up. I probably don't allow people to have placards or balloons or anything in Congress.
I don't know what the official rules are on State of the Union, because, it may be that it is impermissible to do, but it would be actually kind of funny to see if somebody did it. All right, so Karine Jean-Pierre, who is the worst White House press secretary I think that any of us can ever imagine. And she got her job, let's be honest, because of her race, her gender, and her sexuality. Karine Jean-Pierre is Joe Biden's diversity hire as his White House spokesperson. Again, she got the. I did not think that Karine Jean-Pierre was going to be that much worse than the other White House press secretaries. And to be fair, she is in a really difficult position because the Biden White House is quite incompetent. But she regularly gets asked, Buck, about the most important issue, the one that's on the front page of the newspaper, the one that you would think you would have a prepared answer for, because it's not exactly like these questions come out of nowhere. I understand if you get asked about, I'm just going to, toss something out about, water policy in Angola. Like, oh, okay, well, you're probably not expecting water policy in Angola to come up as a question, just throwing something random out there. Getting asked about the Chinese balloon is literally the most expected question you could be asked about. Buck, listen, I don't even know if you've heard this yet. Listen to Karine Jean-Pierre when she is asked about whether the Trump people were informed or knew about these allowed supposed incursions by Chinese balloons. It is a disaster.
So, look, I think that, and we have talked about this before, about how when the PRC government surveillance balloons transited the continental U.S. briefly, at least 3 times, as you just mentioned, during the president's prior administration, and once that we know of the beginning of this administration's, but never for this duration of time, as we know. This information was discovered prior to the administration left, but the intelligence community, as I said, is prepared to give briefings to key officials, but this is something. Post. But this is something that they were not aware of, as we've just laid out.
Okay, so she's stumbling all through this, but Buck, she seemed to say, even in the midst of that word salad, that actually they withheld the information. I mean, it's hard to even understand exactly what she's saying there. But it sounds like she's saying that they withheld the information from the Trump administration that these Chinese balloons had been found. And or she might also be saying, because it's a jumble there, that this was not discovered until after the Trump White House team had left. Either one is incredibly scary, I think, in general. Either they weren't telling the president because they were worried about what he might do, or they didn't know this was happening. I'm not sure which is worse.
Yes, well, this reminds me of something that used to occur during the Trump administration when the hashtag resistance, remember them? Working behind the scenes to prevent nuclear catastrophe by undermining the duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. They would talk about ways that they would either ignore or subvert his ability to be the president. They wouldn't tell him certain things, and they thought they were heroes for that, and they would even decide to withhold information from him. That was something else that they were. Remember that there was a whole storyline of, we're concerned about telling Trump things because he'll spill that classified by, recklessly or something. And this was one
the New York Times had a op-ed from someone inside of the Trump White House. You remember this?
Who was a schmo, by the way? I mean,
right.
That was one of the things. I remember the anonymous staffer.
Yes.
He was like, I'm a senior Trump administration staffer, and I'm working day and night to save America. And it's like, you're a glorified intern, kid. Calm down.
But they treated it. Remember all the speculation about who it was and who exactly? As if it were going to be, somebody in a real position. I knew a lot of
people.
Prominence.
We both knew a lot of people in that White House. All the folks in the comm shop and the domestic policy shop at the high level. I'd never heard of that guy before, but it's like, I'm single-handedly standing athwart Trump to save America. And the media created this whole thing. I don't remember the guy's name to this day, which is pretty hilarious.
Don't remember his name either, but there was people were like, oh, this is, Kellyanne Conway.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is, there were tons of people.
People were saying it was Jared. They were saying it was his son-in-law. I'm like, I don't think his son-in-law.
Can you imagine that Thanksgiving if you wrote an anonymous op-ed to the New York Times about how you were trying to subvert your duly elected father-in-law's ability to actually be president of the United States?
Dear diary, I think my father-in-law is going to create nuclear war, so I'm undermining him. I mean, give me a break. The whole thing was so crazy. But I do think that what this also should be a reminder of for everybody is that this notion of we didn't tell Trump things, that also meant in some cases they were hiding things from the American people. We should know. Let's just take them at their word for a second, because the story on this keeps changing. If China really is sending surveillance balloons over our airspace, that is going to trigger in everyone's mind who knows the most basic history, U.S., Soviet, Cold War surveillance stuff that was going on. And what did I say? Francis Gary Powers, right? We talked about the U-2 that got shot down and the different, the cat and mouse game between the U.S. and the Soviets to understand each other's full nuclear capabilities, understand if there was any kind of a shield that could shoot them down. All the different, the decades of Cold War espionage and counter-espionage that was underway. And we should know that China's doing that, right? That this is not something, if they're flying balloons over our airspace, the American people do have a right to know that. The notion that they would hide that from us is, I think, very troubling, or hide that from the president is super troubling. But even that then it is, in a sense, hidden from the American people. But also, do we really believe it? Because, Clay, this thing was really high in the air, but people could see it from the ground.
Right. No, I mean, that's the point on this. I mean, they were hoping, I think, that we would never become aware of this, which is why my point on it is shoot it down in Alaska. No one would have known if that got shot down over the Alaskan wilderness. It would have landed. It probably wouldn't have been a story for months until somebody decided they wanted it to be a story. And then it would actually look good for the Biden administration. Hey, we recognize that there was this Chinese spy balloon that came into our territory. It was clearly a spy balloon. Why would we allow it to go across the whole country and then shoot it down over water off the coast of South Carolina when you're going to have difficulty getting all the salvage job done?
And if we're talking about troubling revelations that have come out of the Chinese spy balloon issue, by the way, our friend Gordon Chang will join us in the third hour to address the why is China doing this and what does this tell us about Chinese intentions vis-a-vis the United States. I think that's really important. Apparently, they don't just want to sell us really cheap things for Walmart. Apparently, they have some other things in mind, too, everybody. I think we all know that. But look, the Daily Mail reporting here that the intelligence community had classified these previous Chinese balloons as UFOs. Now, I guess technically they would be UFOs at first, but shouldn't the intelligence community be able to figure out the unidentified part of this? Like, how many countries are really going to risk the ire of the United States by sending surveillance balloons over our, this isn't just like skirting the edges of our, national boundaries or something. This is going right over our nuclear strategic command sites in Montana. This is bad stuff.
Am I the only person, Buck, who wonders where they let this balloon go? Like, I mean, in all honesty, if it comes over Alaska, how far out was I presume it left from a ship? Well, I don't know, but I mean, I don't think it would have left from land in China. They're probably not flying it all over. Maybe they did. I'm genuinely curious about all of this. Like, right? How did it get here, and what was the method by which they allowed that to occur?
I remember when I was at U.S. military bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. You would see they had these tethered balloon, and it was a giant surveillance balloon. So it makes sense. I mean, because when you think about it, anything that's jet powered or runs on a rotor or runs on propellers, gonna run out of gas pretty quickly. So if you need static long-term surveillance, old school technology can sometimes be your best friend. A balloon lets you just sort of sit and sit and sit. And so the Chinese have clearly developed an interest in doing this. And also, I assume maybe there's some ways, because it doesn't move that fast, perhaps it's not as easy to pick up on certain radars. Again, I don't know. I'm not a radar or missiles guy. But, it is interesting to me that this is now suddenly a conversation we're having as a country. And yet the Biden administration is like, oh, well, like, they didn't even tell Trump. And this happened a bunch of times before. That shouldn't make anybody feel better. And it certainly shouldn't make Biden feel better.
And I'll just point out again, if this thing is loaded down with explosives, what's to stop them from delivering an attack inside of our country through these methods?